We should be live. We'll give folks a couple minutes to join here. You guys ready for another wonderful day playing the role of an incident responder?
Playing the role is much less stressful than actually executing the role.
Right. All right. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us for another live gameplay with Backdoors and Breaches here. Just a little bit of background information before we get going. We have a few folks playing with us today. We're aiming for this to certainly take no more than an hour. Sometimes these games go quickly, and sometimes we may not get it all done, but we promise to not keep you here for longer than that. With us today, we have Bill Suarez and Mike Curcarito. They'll be playing as defenders, and I'll pause here. And Bill, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thanks, Sean. Good morning, everybody. My name is Bill Suarez. I work for a Wolf & Company partner, Wally Computer Associates. We're a 45-year-old VAR/MSP up in the Northeast, and I do a lot of work in conjunction with the folks at Wolf, providing virtual CISO services out to our customers. And Sean asked me if I'd be interested in participating in this session, and I jumped at the opportunity. So thanks for joining us.
Great. Thanks, Bill. Mike, how about you?
Yeah, glad to be joining you here today, Bill. I'm Mike Curcarito. I'm a senior IT consultant for Wolf & Company, usually conducting IT audits, also specialize in cybersecurity, so helping clients address any emerging threats, and happy to kind of go through Backdoors and Breaches today to simulate a real incident response event.
Awesome. All right. So for those of you that don't know about Backdoors and Breaches, we'll give you a quick primer here. We'll be using the online version, and so you can see that at play.backdoorsandbreaches.com. That is freely available for anyone to use. We will be using the mega deck that combines not only the original game, but all of the expansion decks as well. So that, in the case of this scenario, is going to add some complexity as far as the potential attack avenues, but I think does a really good job to really illustrate how powerful this tool can be for running some of your tabletop exercises. If you do like the physical cards and want to play in person, you can get those at the Spearfish General Store, put on by Black Hills. That's linked here, but also if you search for that, should come up pretty quickly for you, and you can get physical copies of all the different decks. At a high level for the game, I will be playing the role of the incident captain. So I have the scenario here. I know what each of these 4 attack cards are going to be. And my role is going to be facilitating Bill and Mike working through trying to solve the incident. Now, what they're trying to solve is how did the attackers get into their environment? How did they either pivot throughout the environment or escalate their privileges? How did they establish a command and control or data exfiltration channel? And then how did they maintain their persistence? To do that, they have 10 chances to solve this whole puzzle. And what we're going to do, just like the real world, and what I think really makes this game so powerful, is this isn't a tabletop where you can just sit there and say, oh, we would find that piece of malware because our EDR would generate an alert. We can talk about that, but the real world isn't always so easy. So what this game introduces is a 20-sided die to bring in some of that randomness. So what it's going to look like for each of those 10 defender turns is Bill and Mike will look at the scenario, think about what they know so far, and try and choose which defensive card they're going to look at. Maybe they're going to want to review firewall logs. Maybe they're going to want to look at their EDR, whatever it is. Once they decide on what they're going to use for that turn, we're going to roll that 20-sided die. If it comes up as anything between a 1 and a 10, it's going to be considered a failing turn. So as the incident captain, I'll give some sort of explanation. It could be something as simple as you're going to look at your firewall rules, your firewall logs. You roll a 9. That's going to be considered a failing roll. And in that case, you may get an explanation like you had a significant firmware update last week that wiped out the login config. And hey, guess what? You don't have any logs from the last week. If it's an 11 through a 20, that's going to be considered a successful roll. So you want to look at those firewall logs and you roll a 12. That's great. You can go through those logs. And if that defensive control matches up with any of those attacker cards, we'll be able to flip that over and talk through, where to go from there. Now, if you roll a 1 or a 20, or you have 3 failing rolls in a row, Bill and Mike, you're going to get an inject. Some of those are good. All right. Hey, maybe all of a sudden someone comes back from training and there's all sorts of additional abilities or funding available. But to be honest, most of them are bad. And we'll pull an inject if those do come up. The last piece here is if you do look at a procedure and you get a failing roll, I'll put a little marker on that and certainly try and keep me honest with keeping track of them. But you won't be able to call that again for 3 turns. After that, you certainly can go back to it if it would be relevant. You will see 4 of those established procedures as well when we share our screen here. And the idea behind that is really going to be the fact that having a control in place is not the same thing as having that technology there, but also having everyone trained, maybe cross-trained, documented SOPs, rule sets really tuned to your environment. So we're able to give some extra points for those established procedures. Those were generated at random, but you'll see how that can really impact the roles overall. All right, Bill, Mike, any questions before we get started?
Yeah, Sean, I just had one question. So I guess when we're going through, just to remind myself, we can reveal one of the cards. It's not just like chronological to where we first have to figure out the initial compromise, then figure out each other after. We can kind of still reveal as we're playing, correct?
So is your question that you don't have to solve them in chronological order?
Right, correct.
That is correct. Yeah, at this point, a lot of, the incident is underway and you're trying to solve each of the pieces here to be able to respond.
Perfect. Yep. Sounds good.
All right. The last thing I'll add is for any of the folks that are joining us live, if you comment, Mike and Bill can see those comments here. So if you have suggestions of where you want them to go next, or you just want to provide some additional context around why things may or may not work, certainly feel free to do so. And with that, we will go ahead and get started. All right, so a bit of background for you guys. You are here working for Acme Corp. You head up their cybersecurity division. And really, what you guys are doing here is the manufacturing company, right? You're distributing widgets, manufacturing and distributing. You have grown significantly over the last few years, but not all of that has been organic. You have picked up certain other manufacturers and distribution locations along the way. So the network itself is pretty hodgepodge put together. With that, you get an alert from your help desk that they're seeing some indications on a monthly CTI report come through that some of your data may have been exposed, but they're not really sure how trustworthy this is. And they've asked you for your help in reviewing if this is legitimate or not. So with that, Bill, Mike,
Hey, Sean, before you go forward, are you seeing the comments from folks about audio problems?
Yep, I just turned off my video, so hopefully that... I turned my video off. Hopefully that'll help some bandwidth, and hopefully things will proceed okay.
Okay.
That's all right. But with that, hopefully you guys can go ahead and get started.
Yep. So, Bill, what are you thinking? I guess the initial coming from that cyber threat intelligence feed, we're kind of looking at where that source is coming from, what's kind of the alert, and then so would we want to kind of is that coming through on a certain endpoint or so that we would want to analyze there? So looking at the established procedures, maybe the UEBA or
That was where I was leaning to, Mike. Yeah.
yeah,
If there's suspicion of leaked information, then we should see something that tells us there was a change in patterns. So that would be my inclination to look there first as well.
right, because I think it would kind of give us if it was something internal, external, especially with those vendors coming in and everything. So, do you agree then? Kind of starting off with that
Yep.
UEBA? Yeah.
Yep. I think that's our logical place to start. Yep.
All right, and what I'll do here is just bring it up. If folks haven't used the online version before, when you do click on a card, a lot of this game is set up to be educational. So what we want to do here is understand what this procedure is looking to do, and every one of the cards will have some of these resources at the bottom. Now, certainly you could type these in, but one of the things that I really like about the online version is that you are able to just click on these links to learn a bit more. Now, you guys chose the user and entity behavior analytics. That is one of your established procedures. So you're going to have that +3 modifier on there. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and roll. And with that, that is a success. So you've been able to go ahead, look for some of that analytics and figure out, you know what, this actually is providing some information for you. And it looks like a number of hosts in your environment have had some credentials dumped out of memory. And so what you're looking at here is really an indication that that initial CTI alert was very much real. And at this point, we don't know exactly what's going on, but someone in the environment has been moving throughout the place and gathering credentials to continue that pivot and potentially escalation. All right. Bill and Mike, out of the 10 turns, you've used one, and you do have one of your cards revealed, so you're certainly off to a good start here. Where do you want to go now?
So, Mike, we need to figure out how they get in, right?
Right.
Clearly, this is something happening inside. So,
Yeah. Yep. I would also be careful. So since there was a bunch of vendors and everything coming in, that's kind of the network's been growing, everything like that. So I guess looking at maybe additional alerting. So something coming from the scene or something kind of if there was elevated privileges kind of across.
right, because they reported multiple account movement, not
Yep.
just a single account. So we need to find patient zero, right? We need to figure
Right.
out where did this start.
Almost like let's see what we have in the cards below.
And if you guys need me to make any, blow any up to the larger view, I can do that.
Because I'm thinking maybe like if we look at a permissions audit, so if we see if there was any malicious accounts that were created, or if a vendor had elevated privileges that they shouldn't have had, just additional stuff there. So I guess, Sean, would you be able to click into that for the permissions audit if that's like a user access review or kind of going through?
Yep, that's exactly the concept there is looking for do all the users have appropriate privileges?
Or are they over provisioned?
Right. Yep. So I would
I think,
either go with this or looking at the SIEM or another kind of monitoring tools.
all right, well, so let's think about that, though. If we go to the SIM,
Yep.
what do we want to find? We know there's been multiple accounts that appear.
Right.
So if we go to the SIM, are we going to then be able to determine that those multiple accounts were originating or login events, whatever, were originating from a particular endpoint, right? Is that what we want to try to find?
Right. So I think with that, we would see if like someone was creating accounts or there
And
was
from
failed
where they
login.
were creating them, right? What
Right.
endpoint in the environment they were creating them on?
Correct. Yep. So,
Because that could
um,
then tell us to Sean's point, if there's been recent integrations of acquired companies and our M&A team uh, failed to do a good audit on those existing systems that were being added into the enterprise, it's possible that there was an existing compromise. So yeah, let's go that route and see if we can find where that these accounts are getting logged in from.
So which one are you guys looking to run with
that
here?
that'd be the SIEM, right? Or do we
Yeah.
have that in our procedures below?
All right, let me pull this up just so folks can see what we have there. You do not get the +3 modifier here, so this is going to be an original. We're going to go ahead and roll.
Yeah.
And so that is successful, but before we get to that, you are going to get an inject here.
Oh,
So
lovely.
with that, we'll draw the inject before we continue on. All right. So, uh, unfortunately, as we see here, one of your IT staff gave a presentation around a new way to try and find some of these cloud access keys. And with that, unfortunately, someone used that in access. So, what we are going to do is add another pivot and escalate card for you.
Oh, you're no fun.
So, let me close the injects here. And we are going to add on, and we are going to add another pivot and escalate. Oh no, I just reset it. Hold on 1 second here.
See, Carmen paid you back for rolling us a 20. I don't know, Mike. We're at a distinct disadvantage here because neither you or I are actually rolling the die.
Yeah. And then I guess just talking through it, I guess. So once we find those or
Right.
wherever,
So that's a success, right? So that should
yep,
come back and tell us this is the endpoint, right?
right, yep,
So now that we know the endpoint, I mean, we can
yep,
certainly go and look at our EDR, look at our endpoint platform, see if we can find out, is there a new executable that's been added to that platform?
yep,
Um, See what
yeah,
else
and
we
then
can find out about what they're doing, right? And for
right,
example, is there a beacon running on that endpoint? And they're using that to exfiltrate data,
yep.
out of the enterprise.
Yeah, we would probably isolate that endpoint as well, right? Just to start, once we figure out that it is compromised, we'll isolate it and then kind of examine further once we do.
I was just looking at the comment from Old Basak. Yes, dice gods are cruel and capricious. Bill, I completely agree. They're saying my audio is okay, and I'm using a headset mic. I don't know if it might be related to you. Are you using like a puck or something, or?
No, I'm just using the regular computer, so maybe I'll plug in.
I know Sean had me do the high, um, go into the audio settings and tweak one of them. He had me tweak the high resolution audio.
Yep. All right. So what I'm going to do here, I did have to rebuild our scenario. You did have this revealed from an inject perspective. Um, so our roll count is going to be a little skewed here, just based
Right,
on
because we've used two roles. Yeah.
rebuilding, right? So we'll keep track of that. I'm going to add this one here.
How's my audio now to everyone if someone would like to comment?
No, I don't think it's any better. Oh man. All right, the woes of doing things live. All right. So we are going to keep track. You had used two rolls. You don't have any fails yet, but that's all right. We will continue on the way that we can.
So what was
Um,
our result?
yeah, I
Oh,
don't.
that's right. Sorry. So you went to the sim and you did have a successful roll. So that is excellent. Thank you, Bill, for keeping me honest. So with that, you are able to identify that the attackers were able to go through and they were starting to modify some of the group policy objects on some of your machines.
What were
Uh,
we just talking about, Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And with that, you were able to identify that's how they were able to maintain their persistence and continually call back to their attack infrastructure.
Okay.
So if they were, go ahead, Bill.
No. So does that imply, Sean, that since we found it, we were able to disable the GPO?
Um, so you were able to identify this is how they were maintaining persistence at this point between seeing the credential dumping and
Mm-hmm.
some of those accounts had permissions to modify
Yep.
GPOs. Um, that's not something you're going to necessarily be able to, I think, immediately correct. You are going to have to continue to
Dig
go
dig
through.
farther. Okay.
Yep. I think we got to find what those actual compromised accounts are. So maybe with that permissions audit, we'd be get lucky to figure out if there
Yep.
was those certain accounts, or do you see any other procedures that may work there, or if we do threat hunting to kind of see where they would come in, or
Well, I'm also now thinking about that inject and cloud credentials that were compromised.
yep.
So might we want to look at our cloud event log analysis
And
to
one thing, Bill
see?
and Mike, if I can just cut in for Elton that's commenting, they haven't had any failed rolls yet, so they could keep going back to the same procedures after a successful roll. That marker is used for a failed roll when that procedure is going to be on hold.
Okay. Awesome. That sounds good.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering if we may want to look at that log analysis, since that inject just specifically mentioned cloud credentials that were left in a presentation and compromised. Might that show us where one of these connections might have come from?
Yeah, I think so.
But of
I
course, what
don't.
we don't know is we don't know. Now that I'm thinking about it, that might be a little bit of a red herring because we don't know that those credentials necessarily would have given them internal AD access, right? They had
Right.
internal AD access if they were able to do an LSAS credential dump.
Yep. And I
And
mean, they were able to get the cloud security keys there, so who knows how well they're trained and everything like that, to where it could have been compromised credentials from a phishing attempt or anything like that.
and again, the cloud credentials might not translate to local credentials.
Yep.
So, taking a step back again, I think your call on doing the permissions audit is a good next step.
Okay. Sounds good.
Let her
Yeah,
rip,
Sean.
Sean. Let her rip. Be kind.
Yeah, no.
All right, so we'll pull that up again. You do not get the
No
plus.
whammies. No whammies. Oh, wait, wrong game. Sorry.
All
Yahtzee.
right, another success without needing to go to your established procedures. Unfortunately for you, that is not turning over any of your attacker cards. So you were able to pull up, maybe you all do quarterly user access reviews. So you have some of that justification reasoning. It's about 3 months old at this point. You were set to do another one next month. And unfortunately, with a lot of the growth via acquisition that you've had, the last review that was completed really isn't giving you accurate enough information to continue. So with that, we are going to freeze your permissions audit for 3 turns before being able to go back to that.
Okay, so what's another path to get there, Mike? Do we actually do some consequence-driven threat hunting, looking specifically for compromised credential use?
Yeah, I would say because there's the consequence-driven threat hunting, and then there's also the network threat hunting. So I'm trying to
Yeah,
figure out which one.
there's also sequence of events analysis. Sean, can you bring up the consequence-driven threat hunting card for us so we can read it? Thank you. And there's Miss Rita. That's John Strand's mother.
Yep. So again, this is coming from
Okay.
the industrial control
Hmm.
card here. Really threat hunting with a specific ICS focus as far as looking
Yeah.
for some of those real world scenarios.
Yeah. So I don't think that's our best direction, Mike. You close that one down for us, Sean. Let's look at.
Do we look at the network?
Yeah. I'm thinking either the network or the sequence of events.
Yep.
Can you bring up sequence of events for us, Sean, so we can read that one?
This is another card coming from the ICS expansion
Yeah.
deck. All right. So on the OT side of things, making sure you understand exactly like it says,
Hmm.
exactly what is happening and in which order.
Okay. And let's look at the network analysis one that Mike was referencing.
Should be right next to endpoint analysis. Network threat hunting.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. So here is threat hunting in a more traditional IT network sense.
Okay. Yeah, I think that may give us
Mm-hmm.
also.
Well, because it specifically references AC Hunter, which is going to show us what systems are beaconing.
Yep. Yeah, so I think this would probably be best because,
Yep.
I mean, with the C2 and exfiltration, it may be able to give us some more information there as well.
It should tell us what actual endpoints internally are beaconing and to where.
Right. Yep.
So yeah, let's go for this one, Sean.
All right, let's go ahead and roll the die here. And unfortunately, fail for you. We're going to move this over before
Yep.
we forget to keep track there. So unfortunately, you did want to go ahead and review some network threat hunting logs, but unfortunately, the collectors were not phoning home from the different sites. You went through, you had those LSAS credential dump hits from before, but unfortunately, the AC Hunter logs, your threat hunting logs, are not giving you any sort of feedback here.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Let's think about this, Mike.
Yeah, so then where we want to pivot, I guess, would we go back to our user and entity behavior analytics to kind of go through and see if there was anything else that we may have missed the first time based
Well,
on that?
what about the endpoint security protection analysis? See
Yep.
if we can pick up where where a Python script got dropped, or because again, if there's beacons, there's something's been added to these systems to
Right.
run the beacon.
Yep.
And if we can't find it at the macro level by looking at the egress point, maybe we can find it by looking at the endpoints themselves.
No, that sounds good to me.
So we have an endpoint analysis and we have an endpoint security protection analysis.
Yeah, and so the difference there, the endpoint analysis is much more of a forensic review of the device. So I can bring this up for you here, right? That's much more of, we know this is the box to be looking at, and we're going to do a full assessment. The endpoint security protection analysis is more along the lines of going through your EDR
Yeah,
solution.
that's no, we don't want that one. No, I think we want the first one you pulled up, the endpoint analysis.
And is your thought process here being going through, you have some confirmed hits with those credential dumps. Let's take a deeper dive look at those machines.
Well, and we need to find out, we know we have a C2 and data exfiltration. That's what we're trying to find. So that says there is a process running on one or more machines that is beaconing. So we need to find where that is. And I'm assuming this is your defense user.
All right, so that's the one you want to go with?
Hang on, hold that thought. Hang on, let me know. Cyber deception, physical security abuse, firewall, calling consultant. Call a consultant. Can I phone a friend? What do you think, Mike? Endpoint analysis?
Yeah, I'm thinking either the endpoint analysis, and then once we do find that compromised system, hopefully, then we can kind of look a little further from a step back, maybe looking at the server with where it's actually communicating to externally and where there may be exfiltration.
Well, again, if we can find what's beaconing, that should allow us to go back to that initial compromise, right?
Yep.
Because
Right.
then we can look at all events associated with those systems to figure out how it got hit. All right, endpoint analysis, Sean. Final answer.
All right, let's do it. That is unfortunately a failure for you.
Jesus.
So you went, you called ahead to those sites and said, hey, we're going to need some folks to take a deeper dive look at those, and unfortunately, you were not clear in your instructions, and they did power down the machines and set them off to the side for you. By the time you went through to perform your analysis, you weren't getting very much useful information there.
Where's all the log data that was generated by those machines before they were shut down?
Yeah, so you have the local logs that are available. But again, in this, scenario, we'll call it the audit log config locally. Maybe it was done in conjunction with the persistence GPO modification. Was also reconfiguring what you were set to store locally, and unfortunately, did not have any revealing information for you.
Okay.
So what about the one to the right of number 2 there? I can't read it completely.
The scene. Because I mean, the alerts were coming in from
Right. So they've been sent
or going
somewhere.
to the help desk. So where so would we? Because we used the scene before, and that's what we revealed with the pivot and escalation. So, or was that the GPO modification?
Well, either one. I mean, if we can't get anything from the endpoints, right?
Right.
But events that occurred on the endpoints, this has been happening for a while, should have gone to the SIM a while ago. So they should be there.
Right. I think we should just go back to this and see if there's other alerts.
There you go, Sean. Final answer.
All right, let's do it. We'll go back to the sim.
Oof. We started off
Yeah.
hot with the die. Now it's just cold.
Unfortunately, yeah, you and that's 3 fails in a row.
We get another inject.
inject.
Oh, goody.
Go ahead and draw another inject. So, just to close out the failure reason there, right? You're going back to the sim, trying to look for some of that information that maybe wasn't captured locally, and it seems like these GPO modifications happened longer ago than you may have thought. So your sim was really only storing information for you for a couple weeks, and these modifications seem to have taken place. We'll call it maybe a month ago. So your sim data has rolled over for you, going back to last budget season when you were looking
There's
for.
an awful lot of resume generating events in this game.
With this, unfortunately, you went back and went to look at the file share. Maybe you're trying to find your justification for the budget request last time, and that file share is inaccessible. Turns out that was physically removed. So those drives are gone, and the server analysis card will be unavailable to you for the rest of this game today.
Well, that's okay because it hasn't been doing us any good anyway. So
then
so we have security footage of somebody leaving the building with equipment they're not supposed to have. When did that happen? Was police calls?
So we would probably go to the physical review, right? To where we would see, I guess, if there was a vendor that was in there or someone that disguised as a vendor and was able to gain access to a computer or.
Well, clearly somebody gained access to a computer if they absconded the hard drive.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, this certainly highlights, I guess, an extreme version of it. But a lot of times when you're working through an incident, it's not necessarily a single thing going on at any one time. You may have, again, an extreme version here of someone physically removing hard drives from your environment, but you also could have natural disasters or any number of things that can further complicate your response efforts. I would say, just because if you guys remember, we had a technical snafu early, so I believe you have 4 turns
Yep.
remaining here to
Yep.
solve 2 cards. I would say that physical drive theft, while certainly a real issue, probably more of a distraction at
Right.
this.
It's not going to show us anything. Yeah. Yeah. I
Where if
agree.
you remember, the starting criteria or condition for you was related to your cyber threat intelligence report from a vendor highlighting that some of your data may be exposed.
So can you show me protocol analysis? And feel free to move that out of the way. Yeah. Yep.
Yep. And so this is coming from the ICS deck, but what we can talk about here is almost similar to the network threat hunting aspect, as far as looking at what network traffic is going on. Is system A talking to system B in an expected manner, etc.
So again, Mike, I'm thinking this should show us what systems are beaconing.
Right. It should. So I mean, that's what we've been searching
Well,
for.
yes.
So hopefully,
Shoulda, coulda, woulda. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
All right, Sean, roll it on protocol analysis. Let's see if we get a positive hit this time.
All right. Let's do this. That is a success.
Hey,
All right.
thank the Lord and pass the bourbon.
So what I'm going to do, because that's a procedure card from the industrial deck, and this attack card isn't necessarily from that. I think operationally, it's close enough where I am going to give you guys a freebie here. And what I'm going to do is, you were looking at protocol analysis. You were noticing a significant amount of traffic leaving some of those endpoints, going to some cloud service providers. Now, again, it's not listed as a detection, but I think the direction you're heading as far as that network threat hunting goes, are we seeing the appropriate protocols going back and forth, should reveal something related to significant data exfiltration to some of these cloud service providers, especially if it's not something that's expected in your day-to-day operation.
Mm-hmm. All right, so now, Mike, that makes me rethink my original red herring on the compromised cloud credentials. Right? I mean, we don't know what they're doing in the cloud.
Right.
But if we're seeing data going out to the cloud, which again, that could simply be a beacon, right? That's what it's going to do. It's going to, hiding behind that content, a CDN or something along those lines, and sending data. So, so we still need to find how they got here. So we can't go to server analysis, right? Because that was
Right. That was axed.
axed for the remainder of the session.
Yep.
So what does that leave us? Gee, thanks, Sean.
No, sure. Just a reminder, right? So the last thing you're trying to do here, from a game scenario, and again, we're focusing a bit on the game here, versus maybe what you would do in a real world scenario. But at this point, you understand they were able to move throughout the environment and escalate their privileges by dumping credentials on some of those local hosts. They were able to use various cloud services to exfiltrate data. And they were able, with that elevated access, to modify some of the group policy objects to maintain their persistence in the environment. What you don't know at this point is how they initially got in.
Right.
So that compromised account or how they actually compromised an account.
Right. So, I mean, how did they get an account? And then, assuming they VPN'd in as that account to start doing their work, or were they
someone was physically there? Or, I don't know.
That's the next thing.
because what we've looked at so far was we went to the scene, couldn't get anything there, so there was nothing, I guess, helpful from those the CTI or whatever we're kind of reviewing.
Do we go back to user and entity behavior analytics?
Yeah, I would say that would probably be
Right.
helpful.
We still got to figure out how they got there.
Right.
Yeah, let's go with this one, Sean. We got 3 turns left. Oof.
Yeah.
Sean, I'm taking you off my Christmas list. I'm just
Right.
saying.
That's you guys are having a tough go of it here. All right, come up with a failure reason for this.
Another resume generating event?
So yeah, I mean, I guess what we'll say here is, for whatever happened, you went back. You did have that initial successful hit through your user and entity behavior analytics platform, right? So you did get a hit there for the credential dumping, but unfortunately, you went back and there's been no other indications. And part of this, I said the established procedures tend to be those that are better tuned to your environment. But here with the failing role, unfortunately, it seems like that tuning had not yet been completed. So you are running with a lot of the built-in initial rules. Maybe you haven't finished the training period in your environment, and there are no other additional alerts for you to review.
You can tune a piano, but you can't tune a fish. So I noticed somebody out on LinkedIn suggested sequence of events, Mike.
Yep.
I'm also wondering, do we try going back to consequence-driven threat hunting again?
Yeah, maybe the consequence-driven or that sequence of events, since we know everything except for.
Yeah, we got 2 turns. We got 2 turns left.
Yep.
Which one do you want to drive first?
With our established procedures, we get the +3, but does that?
If it's a hit, yeah.
Right.
So, all right. So let's go for that. Let's go for the consequence-driven threat hunting.
All right, excellent. So we're going to use this. Again, this is coming from the industrial deck, so we may modify this a bit depending on what your resulting role is. But really, what's the worst case scenario? And then try and back into that. Do we have any threats? Bring that forward.
Oh, Jesus.
You guys have really filled out the failing role criteria.
I guess so.
Here.
Maybe we should have went with secret.
All right, so we've only got 1 role left. So I'm saying sequence of events, right? That was the other one we were talking about.
Yep.
I mean, the firewall log review, I mean, that might show us, a VPN connection coming in from someplace we don't recognize, but no guarantee. And the way we've been going with logs, they probably hadn't turned them on in the firewall.
Right.
All right, we'll go for it. Successful. You guys are really having a tough go of it here. All right, so alert fatigue is real here. So unfortunately, well, maybe fortunately for you, because it's not going to factor, you would be receiving a -3 modifier for suffering from alert fatigue. The other bad news for you is with your last turn, that is unfortunately not revealing your initial attacker card. You went through the sequence of events analysis, really looking at your OT environment, and nothing in there was really clarifying how the attackers got in. So I will reveal it for you. It was, maybe unsurprisingly, a phishing email into your Microsoft 365 environment.
So it referenced all the tools we tried to use, but it didn't work for us.
Yeah,
the theme and the network threat hunting analysis as well. The only one we didn't do was the cloud event analysis, right?
Yeah. And so a few things. One, I want to go back and give Elton credit. I was misquoted on the rules, and you should be using the little tags here for every procedure, not just the failing roll. So thank you, Elton, for calling that out.
No.
And for, unfortunately, Bill and Mike, unsuccessfully solving the incident here. So, Bill, I think you mentioned there were a lot of resume generating actions for you here. So maybe that's the positive takeaway is
I'm one of them. I don't want to work here anymore, man.
you've got quite the story to tell on your next interview. With that, again, apologies for the audio. I know some people were saying audio is coming through a little bit grumbled. I'm not sure if once the recording is processed, if that will sound a little clearer. Let's hope so. Otherwise, this is at least a little example of how you can use the game. Again, freely available online, play.backdoorsandbreaches.com. Really use this, learn about some of the different attack procedures and potential defensive tools or approaches you can be using. Make your next tabletop exercise a little more exciting, or at least break you out of the rut.
And get a new die thrower.
Yeah, or someone else to roll the die for you. Cool. Well, Bill, Mike, thanks for joining today. And hopefully we got all of the tech issues out of the way today, and the next one will go a little bit smoother.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, Sean.
It was nice playing with you,
I really
Bill.
enjoyed it. Yeah, Mike, I think we make a good team. We just need to have a better supporting cast.
Yep.